Good afternoon, I'm Dennis Galucki. Welcome to the 459th Imagine Greater Buffalo program and our 81st virtual Imagine lecture hosted by our wonderful Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. Thanks so much for joining us today. This program is created by the Center for the Study of Art, Architecture, History, and Nature, and ImagineLifelongLearning.com. We're going to start with our speaker shortly, but first, a little housekeeping. Everyone watching will be muted during our speaker's presentation. So if you have a question, please type it into the chat box and we'll get to as many as we can. This program is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch it again later on the Downtown Central Library's Facebook page and their YouTube channel. And we hope you share the link with your friends and networks. Now, this is our fourth Tuesday of the month, so we deal with nature and science. And we are not only finishing up, as we did last week, our celebration of Erie County 200, but C-SAAHN is kicking off this week with what we're calling EC200 Plus. And to do so, for nature and science, we're bringing in our featured speaker, a good friend of the Imagine program, Kathy Leacock. Kathy is currently the Deputy Director of the Buffalo Museum of Science, overseeing collections, staff engagement, and special projects. She holds degrees in anthropology and library science from the University of Buffalo. Kathy's been associated with the museum since 2003 and has spent most of her tenure working with the collections. Kathy also served as the interim director of museum studies at SUNY Buffalo State before returning to her true love of collection management. So now let's welcome Kathy Leacock, who will discuss the Buffalo Museum of Science, looking back, but importantly, also looking forward. Kathy, take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. Did that work? Are you seeing my slides?
Yes.
All right, excellent. So it's good to be back at the at our special 12:30 meeting, and it's nice to see so many of my friends have joined during their lunch hour. So if there are questions, I look forward to answering them. But as Dennis mentioned, as April comes to a close, we are wrapping up what has been an eventful year of celebrations for Erie County's bicentennial. While planning began in earnest in 2018, the events of 2020 certainly slowed down what was to be a true countywide party. But as Buffalonians do, we persevered and we transitioned from in-person to remote. The planning committee, with the support of our Erie County executive, continued to meet to celebrate the 200-year milestone. Over the last couple of weeks, you've heard from other culturals and members of the planning committee about EC200. Last week, you heard from Doug Kohler and County Executive Mark Polenkars. And then to end out the month, we were asked, the Buffalo Museum of Science, to address what we did for this milestone and what this milestone meant for us. So at the Buffalo Museum of Science, we believe science creates opportunities and shapes our world. There are countless scientific and technological accomplishments that influence our lives and form the framework for our modern society. Often these successes are led by individuals whose stories go untold. So as we celebrate the bicentennial of Erie County, we were pleased to highlight just a few of the people born right here whose accomplishments open new doors of possibility over the last 2 centuries in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So we mounted a panel-based exhibit as part of our Celebrate series. And I thought I would take a few moments to introduce you to some of these people. So let's meet Jenny. Born in Griffin's Mills in 1874, Elizabeth Jane Gilletson Bryan was a conchologist, naturalist, and museum director. In 1892, she began her association with the Buffalo Society of Natural Sciences, which is the parent organization of the Buffalo Museum of Science and TIFF Nature Preserve. And she began as a volunteer. She wanted to organize and clean the society's shell collection. And in 1899, she rose to the position of director, becoming the first female director of a major museum in the United States. And I do have to point out that the image that shows Jenny at her desk is taken when the Buffalo Society of Natural Sciences was in the downtown public library. So that's a beautiful interior shot of the former public library building. So Jenny really saw the museum through a period of growth, including overseeing the Society's participation in the Pan American Exposition in 1901, and her scientific work included acquiring conchological specimens. Unfortunately, Gilletson left Buffalo in 1909 to move to Hawaii with her husband, Dr. William Alanson Bryan, and she continued to work at the Bishop Museum in Honolulu. Dr. Gilletson died on February 28, 1919, at the young age of 45. So let's meet Carlos. He was born in Springville in 1878, and his name, Carlos Emmons Cummings, was a physician, naturalist, and another director of the Buffalo Museum of Science. You see a theme here? Always curious, Cummings began his exploration of nature through the lens of his camera. He majored in biology at the University of Syracuse and then went on to medical school at the University of Buffalo. But rather than practicing medicine, Dr. Cummings devoted his life to the museum and scientific work. In 1906, he was appointed to the staff of the Society, where he stayed for 50 years. Author of numerous articles and books about museum exhibits, Cummings's master plan was actually the foundation on which the original Buffalo Museum of Science was laid out. Dr. Carlos Emmons Cummings died on January 4th, 1964, at the age of 86. Who else we got? Let's meet Arthur, another museum director. Born on the Cattaraugus Reservation of the Seneca Nation of New York in 1881, Arthur Caswell Parker was an archaeologist, historian, and museologist. Parker is remembered as one of the most important Native American scholars of the 20th century. His diverse background, stemming from his father's Seneca heritage and his mother's Scots-English background, really influenced his work in bridging peoples. Parker's scholarship on the Seneca and Haudenosaunee are still widely used today, as his intent was to write for a general audience. Parker became the director of what is now the Rochester Museum and Science Center in 1924, and he was deeply committed to serving that community and developed the museum's collections in anthropology, natural history, and geology. He really saw the museum as a, quote, university of the common man, which is something that we like to talk about today. Dr. Arthur C. Parker died on January 1st, 1955, at the age of 73. Here's someone some of you may know. Meet Wilson, born in Buffalo in 1919. Wilson Greatbatch was an American engineer and inventor known for the implantable pacemaker. Greatbatch was a self-proclaimed tinkerer, and he designed the first practical implantable pacemaker while working in a barn in his Clarence home. At the time, he was an assistant professor of electrical engineering at UB. Greatbatch patented more than 325 inventions. Most notably, in addition to the pacemaker, is his lithium battery, which continues to be used in medical implants. Wilson Greatbatch died in 2011 at the young age of 92. Meet Bruce. Bruce was born in Buffalo in 1921. Charles Bruce Lee was a naturalist, malacologist, veteran, and government human resources administrator. Lee grew up in Buffalo and as a child attended classes at the Buffalo Museum of Science, which he credits with giving him the gift of knowledge. In 1930, when he was in 4th grade, his class took a field trip to the museum. While there, he learned that we offered classes on the weekend that were free to anyone, and he was hooked. He then began an association with the building that lasted all the way through his high school graduation in 1939. Young Lee took classes in birds, astronomy, geology, invertebrates, and conchology. After some college classes, he went into the College Reserve program with the U.S. Army, a segregated program that was not welcoming of African Americans at the time. He went on to continue his academic pursuits at the University of Michigan, where he earned his bachelor's in zoology, master's in biology, and eventually his PhD in malacology. In 1962, he began working at the Library of Congress, and then in the 70s moved to Berkeley, where he stayed until his retirement. In addition to work, he was a community volunteer and very avid collector. And if you're next time you are in the office of executive director of the Buffalo History Museum, Melissa Brown, asked to look at her desk, which was donated to the museum by Dr. Lee. Dr. C. Bruce Lee died on August 10th, 2015 at the age of 93. Meet Mamie. Mamie, born in Buffalo in 1925. Mamie Johnson was an American mathematician who had a 2-decade-long career at C-SAAHN. She studied at Virginia University in Richmond, where she received a bachelor's degree in mathematics. After college, Johnson returned to Buffalo and became the first African-American woman to be hired by Cornell Aeronautical Laboratory, Cal, during the 50s and 60s. It was one of the leading independent organizations in the emerging field of highway safety. Still in operation today, we know it as C-SAAHN. Groundbreaking work in this area continues in their research facility across from the airport. Johnson worked for Cal for 22 years and was part of the team instrumental in developing the seat belts for cars. Mamie Johnson died on January 26, 2013 at the age of 87. Meet Ed. Born in Buffalo in 1936, Edward George Gibson is a former NASA astronaut, pilot, engineer, and physicist. Gibson studied engineering at the University of Rochester before going to graduate school in California. He joined NASA in 1965 and was a scientist astronaut that served as a member of the support crew for Apollo 12 lunar landing. He then helped design components of the Skylab space station, and building on its success, he was chosen as the science pilot for Skylab 4, the final crewed visit to the Skylab space station. Along with 2 other astronauts, they launched on November 16, 1973, and remained in orbit until February 74, making 1,214 revolutions of Earth and just, flying a mere 34.5 million miles. Now retired, Gibson, who recently turned 84, lives outside of Phoenix. Finally, let's meet Peggy. Born in Buffalo in 1951, Margaret Vance is an American human geneticist known for her research on the genetics of Alzheimer's disease. A global leader in the genetics of common diseases, Dr. Vance pioneered the use of novel disease gene mapping techniques to understand major risk factors, specifically in Alzheimer's disease, but other work has been aided with multiple sclerosis, autism, and other age-related macular degeneration. She is an avid Bills fan and is currently the Dr. John T. McDonald Foundation Department Professor of Human Genetics and Director of the John P. Hussman Institute for Human Genomics at the University of Miami's Miller School of Medicine. I could certainly go on. Here in Erie County and Western New York, we have a lot of which to be proud. Highlighting these and more accomplished scientists is just one way the Buffalo Museum of Science chose to mark this milestone. So what other way did we choose to celebrate 200 years of Erie County? Well, with what we do best, dinosaurs, of course. That's my segue, I'm sticking with it. But in February, we welcomed the exhibit Antarctic Dinosaurs from the Field Museum, which is presented by M&T Bank. This exhibit further emphasizes our commitment to the process of science. While the exhibit has dinosaurs, it also has the people responsible for the discovery, excavation, description, and research of those dinosaurs. The exhibit takes you on a journey to Antarctica and invites you along with the researchers as they exhume the fossils that comprise, seen here, Cryolophosaurus, which means frozen crested lizard. You can sort of, doesn't take a scientific mind to understand how Cryolophosaurus got their name. 20 field seasons later, the researchers amassed enough fossil evidence to understand what this early Jurassic theropod may have looked like. Antarctic dinosaurs will be at the museum through Labor Day, and we hope you'll have a chance to visit and learn more about what it takes to work in one of the most inhospitable places on our planet. So what's next? The Buffalo Society of Natural Sciences has a brand new strategic plan, which will serve as our roadmap through the next 5 years. What's unique about this plan is that it is the first time we have had a plan that covers both the museum and TIFF, truly focusing on the combined resources of these two great culturals right here in our city. The plan calls for a dialogue and focuses on the pillars of audience, experience, and partnerships, while remaining sustainable for another 160 years. The only way we can do this is by being of value and relevance to the community that we serve. So in closing, we encourage you to seek out the outstanding individuals of today who are living and working right here in Buffalo and around the world. By making observations, asking questions, and striving to understand how aspects of our world are connected, each of us is an explorer. At the Buffalo Museum of Science, we hope all of our guests will be inspired to seek out hidden stories and recognize their own potential to explore, to discover, and to advance our society. Thank you.
Kathy, that was just what science needs to be heard here in Buffalo, and the role of the Science Museum. I'll restate the year. You said 160 years, and you showed that wonderful image of where the Science Museum was part of the library, and virtually all our culturals that we enjoy today started as components of a library system. In some ways, that's what this archival program of Imagine is about, is to at least collect their stories digitally and have them back in the library, so to speak. So you did well. I wonder if you could comment on your knowledge of the outdoor component of this. Didn't the Museum of Science have different explorations going on in Western New York that really created some interesting finds that help us understand our place in geological history? Could you comment on that?
Oh, sure. I mean, even dating back to when we were still in the library building there, we had an exhibit of Eurypterids, which was from the collection of Lewis Jackson Bennett, who owned a quarry right there on Main Street. And he would encourage his staff to, anytime while they were working, if they found the remains of a fossil, they were asked to bring it to his office. I'm assuming it was his office, but bring it to him. And he amassed this really important record of fossil Eurypterids from right here in Buffalo. I think we had about 950 specimens. So even back then, you know, we were always documenting Western New York. While our collection, we have international collections, we really focus on the flora and fauna of Western New York. That's what we're here for. That's our community. So I think what you're referring to possibly is the excavations that we used to do in Genesee County, New York. For almost 30 years, the society sponsored field expeditions to a site that yielded the remains of megafauna or mastodons, dating to about, well, geologic time. But the focus of many of the field excavations was around 13,000 years ago, when large ice age mammals were roaming Buffalo. So we had mastodons, we had California condor, giant beaver, elk. And so we have that record of life in Western New York from 13,000 years up to present. And that is just one of the stories that we're able to tell here at the museum through our research, through our publication record, and through our collection.
Good. Did we find human remains at all, Kathy, once the glaciers had melted? Is there any record of that?
So Dr. Richard Laub, who's the primary investigator on that, has found modified mastodon remains. So potentially the remains of a mastodon that look like they have been modified by humans, so for becoming an artifact. And I don't want to, Dr. Laub is working right now on a publication that will really address 30 years of research at the dig. So you'll have to sign him up for an Imagine once his book comes out, and you can ask him that question yourself.
Thank you. It's a good segue. Good segue, Kathy. Leah, do we have questions from our viewing audience?
Yes, we have two questions so far. The history of scientists is astounding. How long will the Buffalo Museum of Science continue to display the Erie County 200 scientist posters?
That's a great question. So as I mentioned, it's part of what we call our Celebrate series. And so each month we change out the gallery. It's on the museum's second floor, and look at scientists in particular that fall into particular, sometimes demographic, sometimes geographic. So the EC200 will only be up through the end of the month, which I'm afraid is like next week. I can't believe May is next week. So the Erie County Bicentennial will remain up through the end of April. But we have other months. In September, we celebrate individuals with Hispanic heritage. We do LGBTQIA++ in June. The Buffalo Society of Natural Sciences celebrated our 160th anniversary last December. So we did a special feature on scientists that have been on staff here. And so we're always looking for different ways to shed light on those stories. So there's scientists in every discipline and every personal narrative. And so we want to really talk about those stories.
Great. The other question is, what can one expect if they visit TIFF Nature Preserve? Is it open year round?
Well, the joy of TIFF is you'd never know what you're going to expect, right? So it is we call it our living collection. And so it's really, really just a remarkable place. It's 264 acres, different trails with different levels of difficulty, depending on, how you would like to experience nature. But it's just a really beautiful place to see nature unscripted. There's fishing, there are deer, there are birds. You can walk out into the Cattail Marsh, and right now the painted turtles are there for all to see. But I guess the beauty of TIFF Nature Preserve is it's never the same experience, because every time you go, someone else is going to be quote unquote on exhibit for you. We do offer guided hikes through TIFF if you're more interested in sort of docent-led experiences. And those can be booked in advance on our website, tiff.org.
Great. I have had a few more questions and comments come in. David Cinquino from the Science Museum says we could possibly make the EC200 exhibit available if organizations are interested. And you can contact the museum and ask for the exhibit team.
Absolutely. That's a great comment. It is a panel-based exhibit. And, we do have for the living scientists, we have asked permission to be able to share their story. But if it is something that your organization is interested, we can share copies of those and install them at other sites. That's a great question.
And aside from the dinosaurs, what are the permanent exhibits currently at the Science Museum?
Oh boy. So we have 9 different what we call science studios. So we don't say exhibits, we use the term studio because we want it to be an area of active learning. So we have science studios on biodiversity, Explore You, which is presented by Independent Health. We have Yum, brought to you by Wegmans. We have Rethink Extinct, because you can't have I always say you can't have a science museum without a dinosaur exhibit. One of my favorites is Artifacts, which really focuses, every object tells a story. It's a collections-based exhibit featuring our anthropology collection. And then we have our sort of physical sciences gallery, In Motion, and then Buffalo in Space, which is our astronomy themed exhibit.
Awesome. And then finally, could Dennis discuss Buffalo Day at Chautauqua a little bit?
Well, I'll mention it because we're really going to start focusing next week with our speakers. So, but this will be the 13th annual Buffalo Day, and I'll simply give this teaser for the first time. All Buffalo residents and greater Buffalo residents, actually everybody in a 14201 to 14228 or 14280 zip code will be free for the entire day at Chautauqua. It'll feature speakers from Buffalo. A lot of the focus will be on Olmsted. It's an environmental theme for the week. It's week 2, July 5th, Tuesday, July 5th. And WNED will be showing their Olmsted video at the theater house that is there at Chautauqua. Parking will be free for those who register early. That's how you get a ticket. You can go on Chautauqua's website and see further information. And as I say, we'll kick it off next week with Stephanie Crockett, Executive Director of the Olmsted Parks. She'll be part of the panel that's talking. So thank you for that lead in, and we'll keep mentioning that. Kathy, I do have how do the different areas of related interest, science, and I'm thinking like the Penn-Dixie site that's part of the Hamburg complex, how is there communication and encouragement from the Museum of Science for the greater area like Hamburg and beyond? How does that connect? How does that work?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, as museums and cultural organizations, we're very collaborative. And whenever we can, you know, share resources, we try and do that. So when we have a large, hopefully it will return, but we used to have a large dinosaur day, Dino Fest, and, you know, we would encourage Penn-Dixie to be part of that project. Similarly, if they have a big open house, you know, our staff will go and table at their events. I mean, we're all in this together. We're all serving the same community. Sometimes some of our content areas do overlap, even though we do it, you know, in different ways. But I think as a group of culturals in Western New York, we are very, very collaborative in what we do. Our executive directors meet regularly to talk through, you know, ways that we can collaborate together. The recent support by the Ralph Wilson Jr. Foundation also indicates just what a collaborative group of culturals we are fortunate to have here in Western New York. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the county is a great supporter of the culturals too, and encourages us where possible to work together. That's a great question.
Good. Well, it makes sense. We are a region, and you've always seen yourself in that light. And it's just our culturals are really make us wealthy beyond our imagination in some ways, and is a counter to the constant term that I hear of one of the poorest or most segregated, some of these negative vibes, which have accuracy to them. But I always like to emphasize what we are on the positive side. And certainly our cultural institutions, and especially our Museum of Science, is just a wonderful asset for future generations of folks that call themselves Buffalonians. So, Kathy, I'll thank you very much for
thanks for having us,
for giving us that great summary. And again, as mentioned, Stephanie Crockett will be our featured speaker, Imagine speaker next week. And that'll be May 3rd. It'll be on Zoom again. And we hope that, and she'll be talking about what she plans to be pointing to at Buffalo Day on July 5th. And that's looking at Olmsted, almost asking the question, what would Olmsted do based on our understandings of how he looked at the integration of nature with urban areas. So thanks for joining us. I'm Dennis Galucki. Be well and good day.